So I guess we'll do the panel now. Invite all of the panelists to come up here. Nick, Mehdi, Michael, Gonçalo, Jan, Anton. Yep. So while everyone gets settled, I think we'll need a couple more chairs. Do we have enough? 3? Yeah, I'll take one more here. So I have some questions prepared for the panelists. I'll definitely ask those. And for audience as well, I guess what we can do is you can send me your questions via email to hi@mudit.blog, hi@mudit.blog. And while the panel is going on, I'll try to keep up with the questions and ask anything that comes on my email.
Yeah, it's on. Just go make sure the all the mics
So let's get started. I guess we can start with a quick round of introductions. I guess most of the speakers have already spoken, so you guys might already know about them, but I'll ask everyone to just introduce themselves and tell us how they got into this space in the first place.
Hello, I'm Neville. I'm an academic researcher by training, so I was into static program analysis since 2009, and that was punctured by 2 years working in the gambling industry. Now, the gambling industry is a little more crazy than DeFi, so, you know, I'm really comfortable, like, in this space. So, yeah. So program analysis now, applying that to DeFi obviously makes a lot of sense, so that's how I gravitated here.
Nice. So, hello. Okay. So yeah, I'm Michael, and I started in the space because I started mining Bitcoin on one of the school computers and made a little bit of money that way back 2012 when you could actually do that. And that went down the deep rabbit hole of what is money, et cetera, and then eventually smart contracts. I got tired of Bitcoin for a while because it didn't become the world dominant money in a couple of years, and then Ethereum is like, oh yes, we're going to become the world dominant computer. It didn't happen quickly, but at least people are a little bit more honest about it in that space. And then yeah, finally we're here. We're okay. We need security. My granddad is like 90 and wanted to buy Bitcoin and crypto, and I'm like, I'm going to do that for you. You're not going to touch this, but suffice to say, the young kids, the old grandpas, basically anyone that doesn't have like a computer science degree would love to use the technology without worrying about rug pulls, so that's why I'm here.
Hey guys, my name is Gonçalo. I'm a hacker since I can remember, I think. And I'm one of the co-founders of the ConsenSys Diligence team. We've been going at it for the past 6 years. And before that, people just thought I was trying to hack them for real on the blockchain, but yeah.
All right. Mehdi, co-founder and director of Sigma Prime. Kind of same timeline as you. We started in 2016. The company was formed in 2016. Before that, I was a pen tester. So kind of coming from the Web 2 security space, done all sorts of web application security testing, networks, internal networks, external networks for a Big 4 company, targeting all sorts of different industries. And what got me into this space was Martin Swende. Who knows Martin Swende here? Yeah, he's a legend. We owe him so much. He basically published a whole bunch of amazing write-ups on his blog very early on, like the first kind of year of Ethereum, and had found so many bugs on all these smart contracts, on all these like internal logic, and that blew my mind. I remember just like staying up all night just trying to understand what was going on. So yeah, thanks, Martin.
Hey, I'm Nick with Trail of Bits. I have the world's weirdest resume, so this is going to leave a lot of things out. But I got into this particular space after about 10 or 12 years in incident response, and I got called into an incident response at a crypto company. And I saw how that was working, and then I got brought into another crypto company, and then with a break, I ended up at Paxos as their chief information security officer. And that was right before I joined Trail of Bits. So that's how I got here, but it's a lot more complicated than that.
Hi, my name's Jan. I'm head of L2 scaling at Quantstamp. I got into this because I was doing my PhD in computer science and working part-time as a baker. And then someone at Quantstamp said, hey, maybe you should come do something kind of relevant. Still on? And I said, yeah, that sounds way better than baking bread. So I did that. And ever since, I've been just keeping up to date with everything in the space.
Hi, my name is Anton. I'm a founding partner in ChainSecurity, and My story is a bit weird as well, as usual. I was a student, and I had a friend who was also a student, but he was more like into economical stuff, and he was telling me, like there's this crypto thing, and there is this one guy on Twitter who posts a token, and I always cannot buy it fast enough. And from computer science background, you do a bot for me, and we did a simple stupid bot. It was just looking for this coin of a day. Posts on Twitter and trading it kind of as fast, and this is how I got an interest. The guy name, I think some people may know, it's John McAfee, and this was partially how I got into crypto, doing the bot that was trading based on McAfee's tweets. Yeah.
Super interesting stories. Thanks everyone for being here. This is definitely going to be a super interesting panel, a bunch of great talent. So the way I'm going to do this is I have a bunch of questions here. I'll direct questions to individuals, and then I'll open it up for everyone else to add to it or open up a discussion around that question and see where it goes. So I'll kickstart it with a question from Mehdi. Tell us, what does auditing code actually mean?
So I hate that word, audits, and I think that's your follow-up question, but for someone else, so I'll shut up on that. So security assessments of smart contracts is probably what I would refer to them as. So I can't obviously speak to everyone around, but I would assume that we all go through the code line by line, and we make sure that there aren't any known anti-patterns in the implementation that we're targeting. So really, it's about understanding the logic, consuming, hopefully, documentation that the projects would have provided, hopefully, right? You have documentation. Sometimes, you may need to hop on a quick call with the development team so that you can understand a bit better what their intention is. But essentially, yeah, it's about really understanding the business logic, understanding the potential gaps and misassumptions that may have been introduced by the development team. In our case, as I mentioned in my talk, we always write our own tests. Always. A lot of clients are like, no, but I've got my tests. I don't want to pay for it. No. Well, you just go see someone else. We always write our own tests, and that has saved us so many times. So really, it's a matter of understanding deeply the system that you're auditing, you're reviewing. But also, I think you can only do that if you understand the platform that these things are built on very, very deeply. So really having a rock solid understanding of the EVM, of Ethereum, of its security principles, of its security guarantees is a prerequisite before being able to provide any type of assessment services.
That's great. Anyone else wants to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add to that. That was so he said what I was going to say, sort of. But what I think is really important is this idea that the clients are saying no, use our own tests or things like that. And this comes into a question that's going to come up later, which I think is truly important, which is why do you want an audit? What's behind your reason for wanting an audit? I think there's a lot of confusion around what an audit actually brings you, and we're going to be talking about that, but it's so important as to what an audit is, and it really drives that idea. I can't imagine doing it any other way than what you just said.
Yeah, for sure. The more tests you have, the better. Neville, you wanted to add?
Yeah, so does Sigma Prime accept clients who have not tested their code in that case?
That's a good question. I want to say no, but at the same time, we'd like to take clients that are at potentially various levels of maturity, but they need to understand that the tests that we write are not going to replace their own unit tests, right? So as long as we have that agreement and okay, I'm going to pay for your services and you're going to be writing tests, so I'm not writing unit tests. That's the other end of the spectrum. That's not going to work.
Okay, cool.
That's great. So I think we have already established that auditing or code auditing is not a great word for what we do here. So let's call it security assessments.
Or review.
Yeah. Or review.
Just saying.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair. So I guess we have a bunch of folks here from different audit companies. We can make a decision here. Should we stop calling audits? Should we pick a different words? Gonçalo, what are your opinion on that?
I like audit. No, I'm joking. No, we've been through this over and over again. We've all already agreed, like multiple times, that audit is not the right word. We've settled on reviews at Diligence. Might have like a scattered like audit in communication here and there, just because that's what people look for and understand when like they Google. But other than that, like we've all established that we're not counting like the inventory of nails at a store, you know, like or something. Like it's just not what we do. Though I must say, and I'm not entirely sure if I wanted to fire shots this early, but there are people that do security audits instead of reviews. Then it's just like checklist, checklist, checklist. But yeah, we do security reviews.
Yeah, can be add from my experience. We were before ChainSecurity sometime at PwC, and only once we did actual security audit. It was according to the standard ISAE 3000 to Singaporean governments, because it's the only paper they can read. It was basically really non-informative compared to what auditors usually develop and usually deliver. It was just something, we looked at code and we didn't find anything, something like that, over that lines. Because actually you cannot release a report where you find something. So it's because this is kind of a special certification paper, sort of. And this is the only way.
That's a fair point. So building on that, Anton, like tell us, what does a usual security assessment report looks like? What can we find in it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think everyone has different aspects in their report, like comparing to other companies here. In our reports, what we really like to have is like called system overview. Is this kind of our description of what client system is doing, what are the parts are there, and so on. This is actually something we found good for us to write anyway, just because when you're writing this documentation, you are understanding project better, right? And sometimes we're writing it kind of better than what client has, and they just copy-pasting what we wrote to their website as description. It's happened. But also it's like kind of parts that we use to kind of really know that we understand everything. Also, like there is, of course, findings parts. I think that everyone has this there. And also we add some kind of executive summary for high-level people to understand what the stuff about. Because quite often, like people won't be reading the actual findings. It takes some technical skill, right? So we just do like a section that explains over the lines that we think the project is okay, they're doing the right thing, we have a confidence, or over the lines that we did, but we believe there are way too many findings. We are for sure think there's more, and we have little confidence. So.
That makes sense. So does anyone else add anything extra to their audit reports?
So we had a centralization section. Okay, now many clients don't like it, but it's kind of like, of course, it's not the bulk of the audit, but we also think like, what if the keepers like acted maliciously? What if the maintainer of the protocol acted maliciously, and all of that, right? So we do have a section like that.
That's great.
Also, like we also try to adapt like our reports to the customer needs. You know, like depending on the type of project, obviously. Like I'm guessing, like when Sigma Prime does fuzzes like serialization algorithms, like it'll have a different section. The same for us. Like there have been times. It's not the average, but like there have been times where we've just had agent-based simulations, and that'll be like an entire new part of the report. So we'll adapt.
Yeah, I think one other thing that comes up is just best practices. So like usually it's very contentious when you get into opinionated things with clients around, well, I don't really think you should probably be doing it that way, or you should really be documenting this in the code on the net spec. And so sometimes you have to make a differentiation of like what's a security issue and what is just best practice. So we say notes, and I think other audit firms use a similar approach of just, you should probably do this, but we're not going to tell people you're unsafe because of it. But also we would just like to be able to state you should probably do that. So just trying to politically, in a politically safe way, encourage best practices.
So at Trail of Bits, we do it a little bit differently, but the same. Obviously, we have the findings in the executive summary. We try not to be opinionated about giving any kind of implication that we are approving or saying that this is good or bad. It's not a seal of approval, and it's not really meant for that. What it's really meant to do is let the customer understand where we think their code is and whether it's doing the things that they think that it's supposed to be doing, the way they think that it's supposed to be doing, and nothing else. The place where we get into conversations around how they are doing, which really is for internal use, and a lot of our customers do choose to publish this anyway, is in something that it's a code maturity matrix where we take a look at various aspects that we consider to be important, not necessarily specifically tied to any given finding, but strategically around what the findings we have found tell us about the way they are developing their code. And those are often contentious too, but they are designed really to serve as a medium to long-term roadmap of how we can improve overall as an organization, not just fix the bugs that we found.
That makes sense. The code maturity table is definitely helpful for anyone external. Continuing on that, Nick, when do you want these developers to actually reach out to you to engage with an audit or even just start talking about it?
Yeah, this is kind of a how long is a piece of string question. It really does depend. There is such a thing as being too early, and there is such a thing as being too late. Too late, generally speaking, is when it's in production. And people do come to us and say, hey, this thing's been running for 6 months. Can you guys check it out? And that tells us quite a bit about the customer in terms of their maturity and how they're looking at the audit. They might be looking at this audit, for example, as a pen test, and which kind of would go along with, hey, it's in production, is it safe? We forgot, our compliance guy said that we have to do this, and we tend to we'll do it if they're doing something that we think is worth doing. But generally speaking, it's when you're ready for feedback. You don't have to be done, but you have to be ready to take in external feedback about your assumptions. We've made a bunch of assumptions. We've set forth a number of principles that we want to accomplish, and we would like now, we're at a position now where we can slow down and freeze certain parts of this to take in external feedback and actually make use of it before we get to the point where we're ready to roll this out. I think that would be kind of the sweet spot.
Michael, you wanted to add to it? No one?
Oh, wait, yeah. I'll throw in just like, yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be backlogs that you want to get ahead of. But the other challenge, I think, is knowing what to expect coming up to the audit, especially as things change. Like if they come to us 6 months ahead of time, the code base might not exist. So estimating, okay, so what is this going to take can be more difficult, which is a very challenging area that we're still dealing with. But I think the other thing is, okay, what are you going to be looking for? Like, what is the level of documentation that is going to be required? What is the level of testing we would expect? And we put out like, education on like, this is what you should do before an audit. Some clients follow it, some clients don't. We try to kind of like carefully hint that if it takes us longer to read your code because it's badly documented, we're going to have to charge more time. Sometimes that encourages people, sometimes it doesn't. But I think even if it's just basic, just, hey, this is like the checklist of what you should really have ready before you come to us for an audit. And if you're coming earlier than that, and then either we can still do work with clients that can be like, we call it security review before an audit, but maybe there's a better word we can all agree on. But basically, like before you even do an audit, we can give you much more granular kind of just basic feedback before we have to get adversarial about this is about to go into production. Maybe earlier in the cycle, how should you architect this? How should you be building it out before you get dinged in an audit and then have to spend all this time refactoring? So it's still a life cycle that changes with every client, but like earlier is better if just for that.
I forgot to say one thing, and that's I agree with what you just said. One of the things, if you're thinking about getting a security review, getting an audit, it's important to think about it as early as you can, because there ain't none of us up here who's got like time on Thursday. There's a long waiting list, and that's because there's a lot of people who want to get their stuff looked at. it's a really great way to look at this waiting time, that once you've got the appointment and you've got it all set up, look at that as the time to get prepared, because it's going to take a while. And there's a lot of good stuff that can come out of that waiting period. It's not just all awful because we can't do anything. We really encourage, I think all of us up here would really encourage that. And I'm sure every one of us has, we have office hours, we have like sort of free things for people who are waiting for an audit so that they can prepare as best they can, so that when they get to us, they're going to get the best value.
Yeah, that makes sense. While talking about audit preparedness, Michael, tell us some things teams should do before reaching out to you.
So we have a, and by the way, is there 2 Michaels here? No. Okay, just making sure. There's sometimes 2 Michaels. So basically, there's something that specifically has been worked on that actually just came out a couple weeks ago. There are some people on this panel that have actually contributed, or from orgs that have contributed, which is called ETH Trust. It's something that was put together by the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. And I think there are other resources that people should go to, but it kind of does the best of like summarizing all the things that are likely going to be checked for in an audit, to kind of give clients the heads up of like, okay, before you go through the maelstrom, this is really what you should be looking for. And I think most helpfully, it tries to divide it into stages. There's the first stage of, these are all really basic things you could probably catch in a static analysis tool. Like, hey, you're using transaction origin. Please don't use it to verify if someone's sending you money. And then you can actually create overriding requirements of like, okay, you're using transaction origin, but maybe there's some weird reason you think it's useful. Okay, the next phase of that after we've done static analysis is the manual review. We now see, are you actually using it safely? Or are you encouraging any known issues? And then maybe even going to the next stage is the quality review. Okay, you're using it, but are you documenting it? Are you telling people why you're using it? Is it all in the NAT specs? And so that, like, are you really ready for production? So by dividing it up, it's a little bit more approachable for people that might not be at the audit stage. But it also, like, I think the tricky thing with standards, and this is a first pass on a standard, so everyone please give feedback and gripes, but basically, it's not trying to say you can't use it. It's basically saying, okay, these are things that we're generally considering safe, and there's like there's basically overriding requirements that go all the way down to the final step of the quality review of like, okay, in the end, auditor, please check if this is actually safe. So there's at least like a good mental map you can go down before you reach the edge of the map of we don't know what the future holds, or there's so many possible ways to do like reentrancy that we're not sure. But at least you've tried all the basic stuff to make sure that an auditor doesn't have to go to the trouble of like checking it themselves.
Yeah, sorry, if I may, there's a lot of great tooling out there. Please use it. Please use it. There's a bunch of people here, a bunch of companies here that's been working really, really hard over the past few years. Mithril, Slither, and a whole bunch of others. Please use that tooling. It's going to save our time. It's going to allow us to focus on the business logic type flaws, the really meaningful bugs that are probably very hard for you to find, but there's no excuse nowadays not to run Slither, not to run Mithril before seeking a security assessment.
And I'll say another thing. So like I totally agree. Like Diligence was involved with the trust levels and all of that, and like standardizing things is always great. But like again, like a note of advice, which is like leveling it out may make it seem like some things are more important than others, but then again, I'll just repeat what I said in the talk. Like nothing is truly better, like just more things are better. So just like categorizing them, it just like serves its purpose, but like don't be fooled by the leveling system.
I think it's the layered cheese, right? That's yeah, I love that.
So I think I want to jump in here quickly. The tooling is great, and definitely if you've got the resources and time, 100% do this. But we occasionally still see people who come to us with no tests and no documentation, and it's like the tooling is good, but if you don't know what you're building, you don't have a spec, you don't have tests, the tooling's not going to really help you, because for all you know, you want that specific error to be there, and we're going to tell you it shouldn't be there, but yeah, there's so much to do before the sort of advanced stuff. It doesn't have to be hard. Just put the work in.
Yeah, makes sense. So, John, tell us, like, what should the end users and the clients expect from a security review?
Yeah, so I think this has already been said. Feedback. So I think feedback most of the time on an audit report will be a bug. I don't think there's been too many bugs or reports that we ship that's been totally bug-free. Some issues are sort of not bugs and actually features, and we don't necessarily see that. And sometimes that's because the documentation is not clear, or we haven't sort of fished that out of you from the communication we've had. But feedback in terms of tests and what actually the code is doing just in general is going to be there, right? Ideally, it's good feedback that this is mostly good and you don't have major concerns. Or it's big concerns and when, look, here it is, please fix it before you ship. But I think the more important thing is actually what not to expect, which is a strict guarantee that this is going to work. Everyone here, I don't think anyone guarantees it here, and even if you do formal verification, right? If you don't prove the right invariant, oops, that's it. It's over, right? Like, or if you didn't think of an invariant and it was super important after the hack, well, too bad. It's too little, too late. So feedback is the positive thing you get, because you do get to improve the quality of your code and project every time, I think. Like I said, I don't think we've ever shipped anything that's empty. And the thing to not expect is that this is a stamp that says this will run perfectly forever. Hopefully it does. We really hope it does, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So I'll put in a few thoughts of mine. From my perspective, like, security is not just about final security reviews. I think it's a continuous process. So I do want security people to be involved from a very early stage when there is no code, even when there's just a design document, let's say when there's just an idea, till and be involved even after it's deployed, even after it's in production. You keep discovering new attack vectors, new techniques. The protocol layer itself keeps changing, which might make something vulnerable now. So I think a continuous process is definitely nice. With that respect, we have another question. I'm taking some audience questions now. So I'll say, like, which of the audit firms have you guys audited or done security reviews on non-code things like design documents, specifications, and stuff like that?
Well, we do. We cannot mention the client, but sometimes it does happen. I mean, what I can say is that typically it's expensive to be doing this. Like some of the projects that are starting out, they can only afford to have one audit, and they make it count by making sure that it's done exactly before it's deployed. But yeah, we do that sometimes.
Yeah, we're starting to look at this from, once you hit an audit point, you're usually going to production, and at that point, it's kind of like, good luck, see ya. And even though there have definitely been attempts to pull us into the operational role of like, okay, you sit here with us and help us press the button, we're like, well, we don't do that either. But what we are trying to do is there's been a lot of good, let's say, comparisons to avionics and how like the avionics industry has like helped to mature code before it goes into production. It's in a plane, but there's also still going to be a need for, if you're in the plane and you're flying it and then a red button turns on, that means something has happened, is, okay, then what do you do? And I think one thing we're trying to do more at OpenZeppelin is to help define, like, what is the checklist of, as auditors, we have a great understanding of the code. There are ways that, as a follow-up to an audit, we can also help to figure out how they can do incident response and threat modeling from a training perspective or process perspective, but still give it up to the teams or the communities that are going to have to figure that out. So, once you hope the code is safe, there are still things that go outside of the assumptions. Oracles turn off, protocols upgrade that you weren't expecting, and so figuring out how to respond to that is going to be the next step.
I mean, we've also done that in the past, but to be honest, like I even did some of those things. To be honest, those were one of the most horrible experiences when dealing with clients. I gotta say, the reason for that is that so this happened if it's a retainer, right? Like if it's someone that's not in a retainer and it's just a continuous thing, and you're already used to the client or to the people that you're working with, and you like them also. That's very, very important. But it works better. But we've had cases where I was just reviewing the design phase of some projects with no prior contact, and it's just a miserable experience because people are not ready to hear, and they're if they're not thick-minded, they're just really, really strongly just glued to that one concept that you tell them, dude, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, we do design reviews as well, but mostly for our long-term clients, the retainer type clients that you mentioned. It's also not very intuitive if you're like budget constrained, unfortunately these days. So some of our clients that I put up there are not, and they get us to review what they're thinking of building, which is cool, which is very interesting. And I mentioned that we love fuzzing, and I'm very happy to do that when they have an executable spec. That's the dream, right? Like they've really thought this through. They have an executable spec that I can fuzz. So not only I can provide feedback on the overall design and the various pieces of architecture composing their new protocol, but I can also actually tell them where it might actually go wrong once it's implementation time.
So we find most of the issues being economic attacks. Do you guys also have the same experience, when you're doing a design audit?
So that's interesting. We don't claim to be performing economic reviews. That's a very important thing that we clarify with our clients. We make sure that an implementation is matching whatever spec or whatever design has been put out. But obviously, in a lot of cases, you can easily spot things that go wrong, and particularly with fuzzing. Fuzzing is great at finding those edge cases that if you're just staring at this mathematical equation for hours and hours, you wouldn't be able to find.
Yeah, all the same things echoed. We also helped with formal threat modeling, which I think is actually really important to get that down on paper and really talk to people about how their things look to attackers and give them a sense. Which brings me to this other point, which is when you are getting an audit, this relationship is really intimate. We're going to know as much about the code as people inside your organization, warts and all. It's a really, really close relationship, and the part of it that requires maturity, I think, on both sides is that we have to be willing to look at what it is, and we understand what we want it to be. We have to be able to look at what it is, and it's not contentious, it's constructive. And that, I think, if there's one single thing that sort of trips us up when clients get frustrated, it's if they think that we're insulting them or think that we're saying that this isn't good. It's not about that. It really is around, hey, we understand what you want it to do. That's over here. You're over here. Let's help you get there. And so all of these services that we're talking about, all these different ways of reviewing it are ways to help customers get there incrementally.
Yeah, I guess we're still on topic of design reviews. We've done it too. I think we really like this phase where you have a good spec to the point where it is executable, and ideally you can run it through a Theorem Prover or something like this. I don't know if we've done tons of it, but I think we have done it. I think it'd be great if everyone could do it. I just don't know if everyone has the resources for it because, clients, it drives the price up for the clients and it takes up our time. So,
Neville, do you guys, when you do the economic reviews, do you model things out, or is it purely human brain?
Well, most of it is human brain. We've been involved doing, economic attacks, and doing bug bounties and that sort of thing, and some of them were economic. We do kind of have someone who is a PhD in math. He can model derivatives and things like that. So that guy would get involved in something like that.
So, I asked this because I know that even though it wasn't for a client, I know that, for example, Joran once modeled something I probably can't say who, but modeled something, a system in CAD, but it's a very cumbersome process. That's why I'm asking it. And definitely, like Mehdi said, it falls a little bit out of what we deem is our job.
And sometimes it's obvious. Someone comes to us and say, "I'm gonna create a stable coin. It's gonna have this mechanism to, keep the peg."
Which one? Which one do you have in mind?
No, it didn't work for them.
For sure. So I guess the key takeaway here is that everyone does design document reviews and works throughout the stack, not just security reviews at the end. So I guess my suggestion to everyone here is if you're building a product, get these guys involved throughout the whole process, not just a security review at the end, and be accept feedback. As Gonçalo said, if you are very strict about your specs and your ideas, you're not gonna get the best out of these people. So be adaptable, change, accept suggestions, and be better. So this question was from Thomas from the audience. Thanks for it. His second question or comment was, since the audit queues are so long at all of these companies, he's wondering why don't you guys raise your rates? I'm not going to ask that question because I don't want to give you any ideas.
It's funny.
Moving on. So we have a question from Kurt directed towards Neville. So tell us, how does Watchdog recognize an execution behavior as a bug?
Okay, so first of all, recognizing many different execution behaviors out of just code, that's difficult. We use static program analysis to do that. Now, for specific executions that are particular, we actually do write vulnerability bug patterns based on the abstract execution flow of a smart contract. So I can give you an example. Let's say, for instance, you've got a transfer from, okay? The second argument of transfer from is an important argument, and it must not be tainted by some user that does not have owner access or anything like that, right? So, hey. Okay, so we use, for instance, taint analysis, and the taint analysis is, it also takes into consideration the symbolic conditions that need to be satisfied in order to reach, for instance, that transfer from, which is special and cannot be tainted. So we've got, domain, and also got classic program analysis and also symbolic, all of that combined.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on to the next question.
Wait, can I actually answer the one about the prices?
Okay.
Because I actually think it's important. Like, all right, I was just quoted in something last week saying that we'd raised our rates about 30% in the last few months, and I think that there's a lot of pressure because of these extreme waiting times to raise the rates because our actual costs have gone up, and also there's a lot of people trying to get in who are like Me Too VC-funded crypto bros who are just like doing something that they're like, here, look at this thing, and we want to be discouraging to that, but we also, and I think this is the limiting factor, we want to encourage people to do the right thing, and so we can't just arbitrarily raise rates till they're so eye-watering people go away. It's a really difficult balance to keep out their tire-kicking kibitzers and let people come in who really need it and who are doing really interesting, innovative things. I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but that's what we're experiencing. It's a really tough balance.
Yeah, that's definitely a very nice answer. So moving on to the next question from S Beta. Apologies for the pronunciation, obviously. So they want to ask, like, in the security reviews that you guys do you also consider nation states as possible attackers, or sanctions they can put in, or laws they can, or regulations they can put on?
I guess there's a lot of different ways that could be approached, but I guess the biggest one is the governance one, obviously. So there's assumptions of these actors will act honestly and behave in the interest of the protocol. So I did some fun side research outside of my day job to work on an article for Coin Center that was based on Tradocash, and I said this in the talk, but they built that system to essentially not be controlled by anyone, even the devs or the DAO themselves. So we don't evaluate for that. We don't specifically say, oh, if the government tried to shut this down, you're safe or you're not. But it's inherent in the assumptions that we make about who does have permissions in the system and what can they do. And if you're reading a report and you care about that, you can look at where are the majority of multi-stakeholders living today, assuming that they're not anonymous. That's about as good as you could possibly get. And then when it comes down to Ethereum level censorship, then all bets are off.
Yeah, that feels like if we're talking about worrying with nation states at all layers in the stack, then that's impossible. It's if they shut down all power in the world, then yeah, there are no computers.
I mean, the attack surface is the same for everyone, right? You're a hacker when you Grandma's Basement, you're sponsored by North Korea, you're dealing with the same entry points, right? So I'm not too sure I understand the question too well, to be quite frank.
Yeah, on chain there's kind of no special government addresses, right? Each address handled mostly the same, except some privileged roles on contracts. So, yeah, I mean, the only you could say that government can have better access to the capital or do some manipulation attacks that's based on validators, right? But this is kind of, I would say, in most cases are out of scope because, yeah, who knows what they are capable of. So.
Okay, wait. No, I got to do I got to do a quick call out. Didn't Trail of Bits do a great, and I read a blockchain article about centralities in crypto, and they did go down the stack?
Oh, yeah, this is good.
Yes, we did. And I think that many people thought that we were poo-pooing blockchain technology in general. Actually, what we were saying is there are risks that a lot of people are hand-waving around, and we're not, we're a blockchain, really a blockchain central company. We think that blockchain is fantastic and innovative. What we want to do is articulate risk in a way that people can understand it so that they can take risk mitigations. And I think that after the initial brouhaha over that came out, and we actually, when we released it, we intentionally didn't talk to the sort of cryptocurrency press because the people were just going indiscriminately nuts. But we did do a lot of time talking to regulators. We did a lot of time talking to large institutions who are looking to understand the risks. Because I think if there's one thing that we can all agree with is we're in a fast-moving industry. This is fast-moving technology, and things are happening in parallel. So there's a lot of things going on, and if we're not good at one thing as an industry, it's describing risk in a way that is actionable. We're kind of just like, whoa, this is a good thing, it's new, it's great, let's go. And we just want people to slow down a little bit and take some time. So thanks for bringing that up, because it's a cool paper. It's called Unintended Centralities in Blockchain, and it's on our website.
I liked it. I remember we got called out as OpenZeppelin library has a lot of code, and I didn't actually know what the takeaway was, but I was like, hey, we got mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know if being a centrality is a good thing or a bad thing, but
Well, yes.
Yeah, definitely, that makes sense. If anyone has not read that report, I would highly recommend it. It's super interesting read. So moving on, right now we know most of the Web3 code is not very mature compared to what we have on the traditional side. So Peter wants to know what needs to happen in your opinion for Web3 code bases to be more mature. Do we need more standards? Do we need something like OWASP, or what should happen?
I think I can start. In my opinion, I partially, in my talk, touched the standardization problem. It's interfaces that we have are probably not the best because they are not really describing how you should actually integrate anything. I guess a good thing will be creating some common formalized standard that actually describes not only what 4-byte signatures you should kind of pass and to trigger the function right now, but also describes, is there reentrances inside this contract, right? Is there some dependencies on external protocols like Uniswap, right? What they're using as price feed, right? And it should be not pages of documentation that you need to crawl, but I don't know, it's some kind of, I think I have in a head a standard where it's all stored in some kind of database, and you just kind of can, if you want to integrate new token, just go there and see what are the trust assumptions and what are the integrations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think standards are going to save us. I think as everything matures, the tooling, everything around it, around the ecosystem, as it matures, so will the code, and so does the code right now. If I would be scared to look at Solidity code from 2017. Fuck no. My God, yeah.
I know one of the previous talks, I think, mentioned traceability. And that was okay, you start in the very beginning of your idea. Maybe you did threat modeling, maybe you didn't, but maybe there's a spec. There's a improvement proposal, there's a white paper, whatever. And then eventually you build it, you test it, you do a lot of things, and eventually you get to that audit stage, and hopefully you've done all the things that we would all ideally like you to do. But we don't actually know if you've done them unless there's traceability into that pathway. And then even after you've done it and you've released it, and here's a pain point I think a lot of us have is when they deploy the code, and no one most of the time, people don't actually know if that code that they deployed was the same thing that they mentioned in the report, or even if it's been upgraded later. And then after that, how is it being operated? Who has control of it? There's so many areas that maybe to us, I can look at the Etherscan block explorer and figure it out going through the code, but the vast majority of people have no idea what that is. And I think that's how phishing attacks and a lot of other things happen, but also just general misconceptions about what is secure and what's not. So if we have that in a plain language, or at least a plain timeline, that would first of all, it would help with audits because then we can see what you've actually done up till now, and then after that, it would be helpful for everyone else to know you've been audited and what you're going to do after that.
It makes sense. So in general, in panels, I like it when there is some like disagreement between the panelists. It's more fun. So one thing I'll touch back on, Gonçalo, you mentioned, I think, that code bases that are split in multiple pieces are hard to read, which are like very modular. On the other hand, OpenZeppelin, it's probably the most modular code base out there. So
Yes. Yeah, no. It sucks. But no, wait. Let me trace back. It sucks for us, but it really helps the developers. And the OpenZeppelin libraries are structured that way because it works, It wouldn't be otherwise. It actually works, and it needs to be. And I'm okay, mind you, I'm more okay with reusable pieces that are consumed all of the time by the developing teams to be structured that way, but not with the entire code base being structured that way. Okay, like because like these components, they're really well known. We have this module in like our VS Code extension that is called like the Ethereum doppelganger or something like that, and we already have the addresses and like the GitHub URLs for like all the OZ libraries and their versions loaded up, and we just do the doppelganger check. So that's easy for us. But like that usually that is okay. That is like a separate part of the code base. I'm okay with that. But that when people do that for the entire code base, it's such an overload. In the best audit that I've ever done myself, I think it was like the RICO audit for Luxo. Fabian Vogelsteller did the entire system in one file. It's like start to bottom comments and like in lines dividing with like multi-line comments. I love that, like it just reads better. It just feels more natural. I don't know.
I can also say this is something Viper does by default. Like there's no inheritance. And also speaking about this inheritance in Solidity, I also not a huge fan for it because if you like try to have a contract that inherits multiple contracts, and you need to find what actual OpenZeppelin function like before token transfer does. I mean, it's really understandable pattern and no blame for OpenZeppelin, but sometimes people organize this way. This function is redefined in 5 different ways, right? And you need to basically look at an inheritance tree to actually know what is triggered. Yeah, I mean, we actually internally have like a plugin for VS Code that kind of you compile the code in like Foundry, and then you're relying on the AST of the compiler, like puts you exactly which target you are calling there. So we are relying on that to kind of jump around the code instead of trying to find which functions. Because if you just do a search based on you can have like 5 different functions and you don't know which one is it.
Sometimes what we do is we compile them and then we decompile them, and and then the decompiled representation gives you that explicitly, right?
It also works, yeah.
I appreciate and agree with what was basically everyone said, because like the thing to think about the OpenZeppelin library is that we're building it for like almost anyone to use potentially for anything. So we're like trying to cover a lot of bases with modularity. It doesn't mean you have to write your code base to be modular. If you're doing it for your one thing and you're not like pitching it as, but everyone should inherit this and do it in your own special way. Like you don't need modularity. We built it because it's flexible for a wide array of use cases. If you're doing one use case, just build it for that use case, and you don't have to over-architect it, because then, yeah, it'll probably be a cheaper and easier audit for all of us.
But this was too agreeable. We need spicier questions.
I need spicier questions. Audience, help me. Anyway, so I'll pass on my comments on this as well. So as both a security person and a developer, modularity is great when you have reusability of code base. So you should have modular code base if you are eliminating code duplicacy. But if you are not using that code anywhere else, then modularity doesn't really help much, then you can go with a monolithic architecture. Within the monolithic architecture, you can still follow the principles of like one function, one like task and stuff like that. But if the splitting of stuff between different classes and different contracts and all of that is only really beneficial when you reuse that in a different place. Both from security's point of view, it's good to do that, and from just a code hygiene perspective, it's good. So I'll take a break from the audience questions for a bit and return back to my questions if I can find them. So Nick, one question for you. Should be interesting. I don't think we'll have disagreement on this, but a lot of the community always says if a protocol gets hacked, which was reviewed or audited by one of the auditors, they should be liable. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, it gets us into the point that TT was raising a little bit earlier about testing auditors and making sure that auditors are finding things. Let's talk about expectations of an audit. My short answer is no. But the long answer is it's no, because there are a lot of factors that go into whether an auditor or an audit will find. We're never going to find 100% of the bugs unless we have unlimited amounts of time. We never have unlimited amounts of time for a number of reasons that are beyond our control, and usually those are your budget, your production schedule, your sales promises to your customers, and your ability to get into our cycle. So basically, most of the time, people will be like, yeah, we want 3 weeks and 2 engineers. So we will find 100% of the bugs that can be found by 2 engineers in 3 weeks. And that is no guarantee, and I think that this has already been said. The idea a little bit earlier of, hey, let's insert bugs in so that we can see if our auditor's doing a good job. Well, it helps me because y'all are paying by the hour, but I don't think it helps anybody else. I really don't think that I mean, if we find all 10 of your bugs, but none of the bugs that you didn't know about that you put into your code, that's not a good outcome for you. And that I have a serious problem with that. As somebody who runs an audit company, I'm not giving you value for your money because I'm only finding the little things that you put in. By the way, it was also said that those bugs that they put in, they went out of their way to make them like stupid, right? Because they didn't want to put in any foundational things that would make them do too much work. So now we're finding stupid bugs that you put in as opposed to stupid, like maybe non-stupid bugs that you didn't know you put in. So that's where I am on that, and no.
I'll add to that, and I guess I'll say the liability problem is down to, and again, because we call them audits, but in reality, they're security assessments. There's an assessment, there's findings, but there's not a part where you get to the conclusion and it's like you've passed or failed. Right. And clients don't want to pass or fail because they might fail. So in that sense, and sometimes we try to strongly word, by the way, there was a lot of bugs in this. We only had 2 weeks. We never give a guarantee, but in this case, there almost certainly might be more. And those are the scenarios where, you don't want to bash a client too much in the report. You want it to be cooperative and constructive. But
you want to be factual, right?
You want to be factual, yeah. Yeah, and so in the end, it's like that's where the liability lies. It's like it's what you do with the information. I mean, we give that information to you, and you can just decide not to deploy it. The only liability that comes in, not just like legally but ethically, is did we give you all the information we had in the most direct and clear, palatable way, and make sure you understood it, and have the follow-up conversations of just like sitting down with you and saying, okay, you understand this line by line, you understand why we feel about this. We might disagree, but at least we've made the case as strong as we can.
No, I just want to say that it's very important for everyone to understand that these aren't audits. These are time-boxed security assessments or reviews. Time-boxed. Yeah. If you give me more time, chances are I will find more bugs, right? I had a client recently, gave us a bunch of time. A very complex protocol. Gave us maybe, I can't remember, like 8 personal weeks off the top of my head. The report came out with, oh my God, like tens, like I can't remember, like 15 crits. 20 highs. And obviously, they got a fair bit of value for what they paid for. And at the end of the review process, the client comes to me and said, so we're good, right? We're good to launch. So, yeah, it was a difficult conversation because they did, end up paying a fair bit of money for our services. But unfortunately, the answer is not, no, go for it. You're sweet. No, hell no. Hell no. You should probably be hiring other auditors to take a look at the code base. You should probably be doing more internal testing. You should probably step back and try to think about why there are so many critical bugs in your code base. But unfortunately, the state of our industry is as such that a lot of people see our services as this silver bullet. I'm going to be, coding and coding day and night, but that's fine. 12-bits got me covered. ConsenSys Diligence got me covered, right? And then once they're done with their work, no matter how many issues have been found, we'll be sweet. We should be able to launch. So, yeah. Campaigning hard to change the mentality across the ecosystem, but it's difficult.
I think that like obviously not liabilities. Like auditors can't be like we're not insurance companies, it's like we can be, but we charge a lot more.
One of us might be, but that's another thing.
The point, I just wanted to add that, even though, I fully disagree with, auditors being liable for hacks, I do, that's the wrong way to go about it. I think that's the entire wrong way to go about, creating more alignment. So I'm not okay with liability, but I'm okay with more alignment. I think, there's no harm, no foul in just having more alignment with the client, whether it be, through token payments. Not that we have ever done that, for example. But I think those things are fine to experiment with, but not liability, just alignment, different things.
Yeah. To that end, if a customer of ours gets hacked, obviously we get involved, and we will help with their incident response by helping them by looking at the area. First of all, to see, did we miss anything? But then when we find out that we didn't, then it's really okay, we did look around that area. We can give you some assistance and we can help. And we're never going to leave them out on a limb. And I guess everybody here is doing exactly the same thing. That's the alignment that we're talking about. Because now, as I said, we know your code almost as well as you do. So that means that we are really critical extra sets of hands at a time of incident.
I'll just add one more caveat that I think is also shared, just in case anyone misunderstood it. We are not your incident response. We will help. We will assist.
We will help.
Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, etc. Maybe, and that isn't to say we won't try to help as soon as we can, but there are limitations to that. Please have your own ways of doing it.
Thank you for saving me from myself. Yes.
Yeah, that's all. That all makes sense. People need to understand that security reviews do not guarantee anything. They are just, as Mehdi said, time-boxed security reviews.
I didn't hear that. Could you say that again?
Time-boxed security reviews. Yeah, that's your key takeaway from this. So we are almost at the end. It was a very fun panel. I'll end the panel with one more question, trying to split the panel. I'm not sure if I'll be successful, but upgradability, feature or bug? Let's go around the clock.
I'll be last.
Right. So yeah, I agree with upgradability. Of course, there's been a lot of uninitialized proxies and all of that, and we found a couple in the wild. There's still another one which we don't know who owns it, but there's a few funds locked in there. Yeah, I think it's a feature, but it needs to be implemented in a way which is less modular, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, obviously I'm going to say feature, but I'll say that it is a feature, but it also enables bugs of people and governance. So handle accordingly.
Really do. That's fine. I'll get it. I think I really liked what Michael said in his talk about the fact that it really depends on what you're building. Recently, I was reviewing a report written by one of my team members, and they wanted to raise a high severity finding for a token contract being upgradable. I'm like, I get where you're coming from, auditor. I feel you, but it's not. We're not here to judge. We're not here to make judgments on what people want to build, right? As long as things are clearly documented, as long as users know that token contract is upgradable, who are we to say that they shouldn't be upgrading? So I don't know. It's a tricky one, and I really liked what Michael said earlier.
I like that. I'm gonna go with qualified feature. I'm gonna say this is a religious debate, and I don't really want to get pulled down into it. But I will say that if you are going to do that, start planning early. Start planning at the very beginning when you're planning the very, very foundational thoughts, and make sure that you follow the steps very, very carefully. Because while it can be a feature, it can also bite you in the bum, unless you are very, very determined and careful at every stage to make sure that you're doing things correctly.
I'll also say feature, but with great power comes great responsibility. I think there's a lot that can go wrong, and I think honestly, I think we've already touched on how you can butcher your own contracts by upgrading them wrongly or at the wrong time. I think what people actually miss the most is that they interact with something that can be upgradable and they forget that. So I think that part might be more of a bug, and I wish there was some way to sort of lock in a version better in a consistent manner. But I think in general, feature.
Oh, yeah, it's features that needs to be carefully handled, and I mean, I think it's kind of just a modern meta how to do these things, and there is a lot of alternatives, but I'm not sure like it's developers are educated to know how it can be done other ways, right? So it's, for example, if you have a protocol that is integrated with 10 other tokens, and all these tokens are also upgradable, I mean, you need some sort of upgradability yourself, right? You cannot. The option, like Gonçalo mentioned, you can redeploy the contract every time one of your dependencies changes, right? But there are other alternatives, like doing adapters that you can redeploy every time, right? And this is kind of another way how you can handle the upgradability of your dependencies, right? I guess I think it's definitely overused feature, in my opinion. There's better ways. It's just people don't know them.
That's exactly it. That's what I was gonna say. I don't hate upgradability. Like it's a thing. It's a maybe I do. Yes, yeah, I do. But even still, like it's a concept. Like I don't think I could hate the concept of something being upgradable. You know, like it's hard. I just hate the tools that we're using today to do it. Like most of it is bloated. It's not needed. So, like I hate how little people think about it. It's like, oh, for good measure, I'll just throw in some upgradability. I might need it in the future. No, you won't. Like what are you talking about? You know. So I don't hate the concept. I definitely think that upgradability is a feature. I just think it's a really annoying one. Like really annoying one.
Yeah, definitely, that makes sense. So couldn't split the panel this time, but we'll get them next time. Anyway,
I have one last question. Might split. Yeah. Who has the best logo?
Thank you. I've heard Sigma Prime multiple times. So
Sigma Prime? Is it Sigma Prime? Okay. I think you won this one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I like the logo.
I want to give it like ChainSecurity like runner-up just because like I like fractals. So
Thank you.
We don't spend money on frivolity.
Yeah, bunch of interesting answers, and it has been a really fun panel. Thanks for being here. It was nice talking to you all. We'll take a quick break here, 15 or 20 minutes. You can have coffee outside.
Thank you, Mehdi.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.